Okay, rulers, settle down. Ruler School is brought to you by Odyssey Games, where you can go to get pre-orders of all the upcoming Force of Will sets, as well as releases of previous sets after they come out. ccgprime.com, with over 100,000 Force of Will singles, as well as out-of-print boxes from the past, and TCG accessories, as well as fowlibrary.com, a wonderful resource for deck lists, article discussions, and more. Check them out at fowlibrary.com, as well as these amazing patrons. Special thanks to guest lecturer member Vite Raman. Thank you for your support. Class is in session.
Back in the day.
Hey there, rulers, and Merry Christmas and almost Happy New Year. Welcome back after 2 long weeks of Force of Will to Office Hours, your favorite ever live Force of Will podcast, featuring myself, DMO73, and Mike Rance, who thought he could do the intro and then realized there's a bunch of elements to it, and so decided to just let me do it instead.
Hey guys, DMO73
here. And joining us from his new home in Portland, we have Brandan Bremont.
Don't call it a comeback. I was here the whole time.
I mean, you never really left.
I know. I was in your hearts the whole time. Every episode.
The whole time. We are here to talk about all things Force of Will, but specifically we're talking about something that 2 of the 3 of us here on this cast have done a lot, which is Cube. The idea of kind of the expansion of the limited format to kind of constructing your own limited format and constantly evolving it. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because it's a new cluster. There's a new bunch of new cards that I think have some pretty interesting implications for the cube, specifically that like they aren't necessarily order dependent to be worthy of being in the cube environment, which is really cool because it gives you a nice little bit of ability to kind of be flexible there. And we're going to talk a little bit about what it kind of takes to put in a cube, what kind of cards you kind of think about, or construction of your cube, and then kind of talk about our recent experiences with some of the new cards. Brandon has had some new experiences with the new set, so I'm curious to hear that. And then we want to hear from you guys in the chat as well about your thoughts. As we do get started, if you like what we're doing, if you want to consider that New Year's resolution to support Ruler School financially, you consider clicking that join button down below and start your tutelage here at Ruler School. It's essentially a Twitch Prime subscription. It goes to support the channel, gets you access to the emotes and all kinds of other cool perks. The higher up you go, we appreciate that support. It makes all of this possible. And you can check out our sponsors, Odyssey Games and CCG Prime. And we're working with CCG Prime right now, actually, to have them set up a Ruler School Cube bundle, where you can actually buy our cube, like, pre-made. So we'll have more information on that soon, because our cube and Bremont's cube started at the same point and then kind of split a little bit. But so you can buy the Ruler School version of the cube if you want to try it for yourself. So yeah, cube. Brandon, what is a cube for those of us who maybe don't know?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to start by explaining what it is, both like literally what it is and sort of the philosophy that goes into it. Well, what a cube is basically just a collection of Force of Will cards, typically singles, that is meant to be drafted over and over again to create a limited format. So essentially you go through your old collection, you find a bunch of cards that you like to play with at one point or think would be good, sort of independent of their set's environment. You bundle them all up, you get your friends together, you divvy them up however you want to draft them, and then you get to play with a deck that was limited in the cards that you could pick for it. What this does is a couple of cool things. First of all, the decks are very depowered from a normal constructed deck, of course. You don't get to pick 4 of the best card in your colors in your sets, and it creates a dramatic amount of replayability that you don't often get from constructed, because every time you play, it's going to be a wildly different experience. You know, you never had to final battle a Karura before, or Dawn of Earth in response to their Kaguya's Moonbeam Butterfly. You know, and like all these like interactions that you never got to experience, you sort of get to have. And I personally, from the bottom of my heart, believe that Cube Force of Will is the most fun you can have with Force of Will. It is fun, it is balanced, it is deeply replayable, and it really lets you enjoy the best parts of Force of Will, which is sort of the design of the gameplay itself, rather than if you are sometimes sort of disenfranchised with the balance of constructed. You don't have to worry about that here. The game is self-correcting because everyone has an equal opportunity to get any particularly powerful stuff, and anything that is too powerful gets overly drafted so that that makes it less powerful. And so it's just a fun experience. If you haven't gotten to do it, and you have a bunch of old Force of Will cards laying around, you can do it with basically any size that fits your play group. And I highly encourage you to try and give it a shot and making your own cube.
Yeah, I'm actually putting it here in the chat. This is the open source spreadsheet for what we are currently playing in the cube, in our cube. It actually has a fan submissions tab. So like if there's a card that you take it and you say, hey, why don't try this card? We welcome that because we think that there's some cool stuff to kind of swap around with. I think one of the best things that's kind of come for Cube in the past couple years for Force of Will is the newest draft ruler. Not the order one that came out in this cluster, but the actual like J ruler. It's nice to have something kind of official to work with, unlike playing the old Rhea cluster ones or, you know, Clockwork Magic Furnace way back in the day at the beginning of the game. I will second what Bremont says about like the replayability of it. You never know what you're gonna get. There are, of course, like quote unquote archetypes that kind of exist in the cube environment, but the likelihood that you necessarily will get the entire thing is very rare. And like Bremont said, it can be self-corrected. So if you're finding something that's getting drafted too much or is proving to have too much of an impact regardless of who has it, you can just pull it. It is for the person who just wants to enjoy playing Force of Will all the time. It eliminates all of the problems that you might have with some of the ways that some things are handled or kind of the development of the game.
Absolutely.
So it's a lot of fun. It drove my love of Eldorado Pearlshine.
Yeah, absolutely. And El Dorado is a great example of one of the things that Cube does for the game, which is to say that if a card is powerful but doesn't necessarily fit into the standard environment that it was printed in, Cube kind of can give them a new lease on life. It can really give these cards the ability to shine and give that player experience that they were printed to give. In a new home that isn't standard, and I think that is very cool. I mean, Eldorado Pearlshine is one of the best cards that you can draft and play in Cube, and saw absolutely zero standard play at the time it was printed. So I think that's a really cool element to the Cube.
Yeah, for sure. It certainly helps you play old cards that you miss, and play new medium to new cards that like you wouldn't necessarily have been able to play during their New Frontiers era, because in the limited environment, suddenly those cards become better, or some of the things that you maybe would have naturally gravitated to become worse in a limited environment, which is really, really fun.
Absolutely.
Uh,
And then
Go ahead.
it's deeply skill intensive too. And if you're one of those people that hasn't had the privilege of getting to play very much limited in other card games, I think there's a misconception that because it's so random that it's not, that there's no skill to it. It's, oh well, you got your bomb rares and they didn't. Cube is very much not like that, because the power level is generally relatively uniform, and that we only really put good cards in our cube anyway, and you have such access to such a large number of them that really it becomes quite deeply skill intensive, because there's so many more things to play around, so many more decisions when it comes to deck building, much more onboard combat than you typically see in constructed Force of Will. And these are all elements that create highly interactive, highly decision focused, highly skill intensive games. And I do believe that Cube is one of the most skill intensive Force of Will formats that you get to play.
Speaking of skill intensive, Mike, have you heard anything from Southern Hobby about you getting your product yet?
Nope.
Yeah, I know that this has been. I've looked into it. There was a rumor going around that it was like something about a short printing. It's not.
I've also heard COVID scares.
It's not about. It's nothing to do with any short printing, as far as I'm aware from any of my contacts. It truly does just seem like Southern is struggling right now to figure out where to get product and how, which is frustrating for people who ordered it. I know that for sure. But you heard it here first. You can kind of put your ease to bed that it's not a problem on iSpy's end. It does, or a bad decision on I Spy's end. It truly does seem to be like the pipeline problem. Brandon, I'm curious. So one of the things that we had going into this cluster is we talked about, specifically we looked at like revolution cards, and there are cards that are fine even without their revolution text, or like cards that are worth implication, putting into cube without it. But we also talked about the idea of like, now that we have this different type of judgment kind of concept, how does that find its way into the cube or not? And so we at the time, for now, we've settled on no, that at least for now, revolution is not finding its way into our cube. But I would be interested. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on eventually, once the pool gets to a point, a wider point of allowing choice between a regular J ruler and revolution order, or if you're the same position that kind of I am right now, is that I don't think that revolution has a place in the cube as it stands.
Yeah, so at this point, we're kind of talking specifically about our preferences for cube.
Sure.
I think it's worth noting that you can have your cube be whatever you want it to be. If someone at home was trying to make one, and especially if if most of your collection is this new set because you just started playing Force of Will, by all means, Revolution Cube would be awesome. I'd consider really making that. I think because both me and your cube span the entirety of Force of Will, and this would be what, 1/7 of the cards, assuming even the full cluster will be 1/7 of the total cards you have access to.
Right.
So I think from that perspective, it's a little bit worse. But even now, me and you don't play with the same rulers in our cube. And so that decision already gets to exist. Like you can pick whatever you want. I personally think that for a entire history of Force of Will powered cube, it's very unlikely to be a decision that you want to make. But, more power to anyone that does. And if you do, send me the list. I'd love to see it.
Yeah, that's the beauty of cubes. Everybody's cube can be a little different, which is why we wanted to make ours, open to the community for people to like get started. So that brings us to our next piece here of like cards from the new set. I'd be interested to see, because you said you guys have already kind of tooled around with it a little bit. I'd be interested to see what cards made the like list to find their way in, and see if they line up with the things that I also maybe have thought about. And then also in the chat, like if there's a card from the new set that you think you'd want to see, put into a cube or something like that, let us know. Maybe we'll try it out.
And I think the other cool thing about this prompt is as we go, you can sort of start to tell stories about the nature of cube based on what ends up getting included. And I think this first one is just such a great example. We put Artillerist of Faith in our cube, and we've been extremely pleased with how that card plays. So for those that don't know, it's a 1-mana 3/3 with Pierce. Gets +X/+X, where X is the highest total cost among entities you control. And when it enters the battlefield, you can discard a card. If you do, it deals 200 multiplied by the total cost of that card to target player, and then you draw a card.
I'm gonna pull it up on
already
screen.
On its face.
I'm gonna pull it up. I'm gonna pull it up on screen here for us.
Oh, I see. So already, this is kind of an okay on rate, low cost card. One of the problems with white in cube in general is it's got a little bit of an identity crisis, and this is kind of going to be true for basically any cube you'd want to make. That light sort of has this combination of miscalcs and naughty child's chastisings and bigger threats like Tigris and recursive engines that make it want to play this slow game. But then it's also got a very wide slew of 1-mana big for its size units. It's got Pierres, it's got small flyers that make the deck want to be sort of aggressive. And so these two elements have kind of always plagued light as being this identity struck color. And what Artillerist does is that it provides a very aggressive 1-drop for the aggro decks that also pays off as a looter for things that want to go later. So it kind of bridges the gap between those identities and has really helped. I think that it helps give light earlier options for getting into either of those strategies. The light fire aggressive decks would love this for the late game burn element, but your green, black, blue, white late game hodgepodge decks love it in the late game too. So really, really a great overperformer there. Really efficient. Not something your opponent feels like they are not having fun playing against. Easy to understand. Really, just an all-around A+ addition to the cube. Very pleased with how that one is played.
Yeah, I would agree. I think this is a card that I've looked at as well as being something for that option. So yeah, cool.
Guys, was this card on the errata list?
Artillerist was not.
I don't think so.
Does this card just go infinite? Oh no, never mind. I can't read.
What?
Don't mind me.
What? Mike,
What did you think it
Mike,
did?
what
What
do you think it
did?
did?
I might have missed the enter part of it.
That it just like discard a card, burn them, draw a card, discard a card, burn them, draw a card. That you could just like, it's an activate ability.
One light, you win the game. Very nice.
As long as you have a deck, you can
Listen,
win the
man. You're right. It's in the wrong color for that.
game.
My bad.
Yeah, it's in the wrong color for that. I think you're thinking red.
Like this.
I mean, I would assume green, but you know what.
Did you want to go back and forth, Jeremy? Did you want to say?
Yeah. I think I can stick with light. I think going in the same vein, I actually really like where is it? I actually really like the card from the starter deck, Gary and Frecky. Particularly because our cube also has a good amount of reanimation stuff in a bunch of different colors. And so when you have something like this, so Gary and Frecky, 5-drop, 13/13. On enter, remove target non-J/non-magic or non-J ruler, non-magic zone entity from the game, and then when it dies, you get to do the same thing. In the cube environment, it's not difficult to just hardcast 5-drops. Like, you have games where that's just going to happen. And like I said, we have reanimator strategies in the cube in lots of different ways and lots of different color applications. And so a card like this, that it's a nice body, it's got a kind of a +1 enter while being a threat, something like that, feels very at home in the cube. Like, I look at this card, and sure, when you're considering the context of like with the 3-drop reanimate spell in Odin, it's supposed to be this idea of like you're just gonna keep reanimating it every single turn, and so that seems crazy. But like, if you're playing in the cube, you're not gonna get that text. So like, this just feels like a fair bomb. And so like, I like finding room for fair bombs to replace to like spice up the cube, in the sense of like, I take out a previous fair bomb and I put in a new fair bomb, just to like,
I was actually about to ask you
up.
guys, when you guys are building your cubes, I feel like my local players, we have one guy that tends to like build the cube and then ask us for advice, and then we try and give what we can, but he's very much like a Timmy Johnny leaning player when it comes to the cube. So I feel like there's cards like this that I'm like, yeah, this would be like insane to pull out of our cube, because ours is massive. We just kind of grab whatever we can, toss it in, and then just kind of
our
mess
cube
around and build it.
Our cube is the one that we use for ruler school is exactly enough for an 8-man draft.
Ours is too. We trade card for card to keep it exactly it.
Yep, I do the same thing. So when I put in a new card, I pull out a card, and I try to keep it. For the most part, I try to keep it comparable color wise, unless I feel like the colors need some retooling, and then I'll take something out of a color and add it to another.
Our cube is perfectly color balanced, so light card replaces light card.
Too. That's kind of what our guy does too. Yeah,
I think
it's perfectly color balanced in terms of the number of those cards, not balanced in terms of power level.
Yeah, I think we're I think we've tried to keep it as close as we can. We've done some slight tweaks to like maybe one of the colors is like +1 or -1 based on some of the cards within that color. So like, power wise, we've tried to kind of equalize it a little bit, and that's led to maybe 1 or 2 card differences based on the color. But then also when you throw in like multicolored cards to it, like, it's all, kind of wonky, and mostly all right there the same. So
yeah, so our this actually kind of segues nicely both into talking about the white card that you just named and talking about what Mike's talking about, which is that one of the goals, one of the iterative processes that you get to do as you're designing and playing your cube is attempting to make it color balanced in terms of the power level. Because what you will likely find if you made a cube the same way I did, which is favorite cards throughout history, best things that look good and limited, you'll find that the unfortunate fact of the matter is that darkness and wind are both very, very strong, and the other 3 colors fall behind it. And that's just kind of the nature of how Force of Will has been designed. They're like, if you just completely blindfolded yourself and just got the best cards of every color, Black and Wind would be the best, and it's not even close. And so one of the things that we like to do is we try and add good cards in Light, Fire, and Water, and then we try and not add great new cards in Darkness and Wind when we can.
Yep.
And this is a great example of a card that will hopefully bring Light's power level up a little bit to try and be on par with Wind and Darkness.
Yeah,
and so
like
that one's in our cube too.
Yeah,
Very
we
cool.
recently took out Jupiter from our cube.
I think that's fair.
from green. We recently took out Jupiter from our cube in green, and we also took out the pure green Pharesia. Or sorry, no, the black green Pharesia from AO3.
Absolutely.
Those were cards that got pulled recently in an effort to, like you say, bring down green black and give some wiggle room for the other colors.
We had green black Pharesia in our cube for a little bit. We ended up taking out. We still have Jupiter in there. Like on some level, there's a discussion to be had about the identity of each of the colors and like whether or not Jupiter is like core to that identity, and like as a 5-drop, is he fair? But I do agree that like if your goal is to nerf Wind, then taking Jupiter out of the cube is definitely a great place to start. He's just a ridiculous
obviously card. Pharesia is in a limited format is just very difficult to remove.
Yeah.
So almost unkillable. Almost unkillable.
Yeah. One of the discussions that we tend to have when talking about putting in or taking out cards is like, how fun is this to play against? And one of the things that really removes fun from the game is uninteractivity, and that Pharesia is just completely uninteractive in cube. It's just like this resolves and you're probably going to win the game, and if you don't, then you probably have to sink a ridiculous amount into it.
Yeah,
it's
like I'm still going +4 just from you trying to kill this. Like
we used to have a card called Lightning Rod Mermaid in the cube. It's a 1 blue for a 1/6.
Also had that in the cube for a bit, and it got removed after 1
has
session.
To target or disable, and then after it's targeted, it gains barrier. And that one got taken out, not even for a power level concern. Like, it's not even like the card was too good. It was just so obnoxious to play against. It just wasn't a fun experience, and so it's out of there.
We pulled that one after we played it at the Caseyville GP with you. As soon as that made it around the table and we saw how unfun it was, we were like, nope.
Yeah,
see ya.
Just not a very good experience. Sometimes you play it and it does nothing because your opponent's curving out with creatures, and sometimes you play it and their whole hand is removal, and you're just like, well, this card decided the whole game. That's obnoxious as a 1-drop.
So like, yeah, I'm glad that we have the both similar ideas here with Gary and Frecky. What is your next card?
All right, let's go on to Fire.
Fire.
So we added flaming. Okay, so also I should preface this. I kind of already led into this, but another theme that you'll see is that we are adding the best water, fire, and light cards to our cube. And you might look at the card list and be like, why didn't you add this ridiculous green and black card to the cube? And the answer is because we are, even now at this point in our cube, Wind and Darkness are the 2 best colors, and so we're still biasing powerful cards in other colors. That said, our next card is Flaming Salamander. It is 2 for is red and 1 for a 7/7 with Resonance Fire Magic Stone. Deal 600 damage to target J Resonator, and if that damage is dealt this way, destroy it.
Yep.
A very, very good fireball. And also, our cube has a minor Fire Devotion Matters theme. We have Kunlun, the red edition that says Fire Resonators get +4/+4. 3/3, 4/4, one of those 2 numbers.
3/3.
I believe.
I know Fushi.
Yeah. And we also have the I'm gonna forget the name, but it's a quadruple fire 12/10 with first strike and swiftness. That's very good. And so we have a lot of cards that particularly reward playing a lot of fire specifically, so that the mono red deck can exist, which if you come from Magic,
set.
A popular theme there, and so you get a lot of and also it works because red is just a very focused color in terms of what it does in our cube. It's just very aggressive, and so this card is nice because it's A, very powerful, and B, plays into a pre-existing theme, so it slides in there very nicely. And it's powerful, and it's very good. It raises the total power level of fire. It's better than the worst card it replaced by a lot.
Having played, so this is an interesting application to a similar thing that we were talking about earlier, is that this card this card's application in limited versus constructed is significantly different. Having played several pre-releases and even a draft of just the new set, the power of Flaming Salamander is really, really felt. in terms of like when you're in that limited environment, it has this repeatable pressure. It has the ability to kind of keep things controlled. And then you go into New Frontiers, and like there are just better options for like what even like is needed. Like the threat of Flaming Salamander in New Frontiers is not necessarily as needed as like in what it's able to do in Limited, which is cool for me because then this is a card that I would agree. I absolutely am going to try to find room for this in the cube because I think that it has a nice identity all by itself. It doesn't necessarily really require a ton of other things to make work. And it's good at what it does, but it also doesn't feel unfun to play against. Like it's just a solid card.
Yep.
And I think that that's something that I look for when I scan new cards and look for the cube. So we're 3 for 3, Brandon. We're 3 for 3 on agreement.
I might as well. I feel like it's also worth mentioning to be careful to play this if your opponent has no resonators because its ability is mandatory.
Yep, you will shoot yourself. You will shoot
Another great
yourself.
cube experience is the hilarious blowouts and reading texts you've never had to read before. So that's also an A+ addition to the cube.
iFizz asks a great question. Is Lance is in there then? I believe we still have Lancelot in our cube.
Oh, absolutely. If we have Lance in there, we're not gonna get rid of him either. Great addition to the cube.
I think Lance is still in there. I'm gonna go check.
Overperformer.
While I'm here, I'm gonna go
Yeah,
check.
our guys tend to play Lance a lot.
How?
Hey.
It looks like I've removed him from my cube.
Oh, well. Womp womp.
Well, I mean, I will admit that might partially be because I'm a rarity snob and I like need to have my cube be max rarity, and I couldn't find a Farquaad Lancelot / I didn't want to play a Farquaad Lancelot in my cube.
I think Farquaad Lancelot is ours. I'll just send it to you. If you care, I will send it to you.
Okay.
And I think it's a great addition.
We'll find Lancelot back to the cube.
Don't make me beg, said Jeremy.
So let's see. In Fire, let me see if there's any other cards that I can think of in Fire that I think would be
you might consider Melua as like a option to be in the cube. I don't particularly love it.
Oh, the like
But-
discard burn the field. Well, discard burn the field.
Yeah, it's when this card's destroyed, it deals damage
Oh,
equal to
yes.
its
Right, the
opponent.
discard is
Otherwise,
from
it's
Its
used
Revolution.
Oh,
No, the revolution doesn't matter, but it's like a
Mage
fine.
Ma'at.
What are your thoughts on This Means War?
This means war.
So two red and 1 quick cast. If this is the
That's
very
great.
first, spell you play of the game, it's free. Draw 2.
And then text doesn't matter. Okay. So 3 mana quick cast draw 2 is way below curve, and also
Sure.
a little up is not insane. If you play it for 0, it's obviously great. The tails text.
I feel like a lot of the time draw 2s without any additional like oomph to them just kind of fall
Right.
a little flat.
The main reason why this
the
is
cubes I've been at.
the main reason of like why I think this is interesting is because I've had experiences playing in the cube where my deck is like 27, 28, like it's hard for me to get down to 25. But even like the idea of because of Mulligan, because my starting deck is so small that like this card, like because of the potential implications that I could see it in opener, that make me want to draft it.
Well, yeah,
Right.
I mean, if you cast it in opener, then that's very good. But
Right.
like,
But it's a
it's
very
it's
pro
easy.
con. Like if it's not in your opener, then it feels pretty bad. And so that's
so
why I'd
like
be
what
curious.
what you said about how you have trouble cutting down to 25, I think is a strong mark against this card, because how often when you have 27 cards and you're looking for 2 cuts to see this and you're just like, yeah, that's probably the cut. I mean, like it's going to be
That's fair.
always, right?
That's fair.
And so like in that sense, I mean, it's not I wouldn't like think someone was foolish for putting in there. I don't think it's something we're going to put in, but
Sure.
it's fair. I mean,
Yeah.
it brings red in another direction too, where it's like this is the kind of card that rewards you for trading 1 for 1 and eventually just trying to get a card advantage edge on your opponent, which is a fun element of cube that you don't always get to see in constructed.
Right.
In that sense, I think it's a cool addition.
Cool. So, what would be your next? Do you have any more in red?
Oh,
I don't really know if
I don't have any more in red, but my next one is my favorite addition to the cube
Is it
of
what-
all the ones.
What color is it?
Water.
Is it Fairy of Trickery?
It is.
Yeah, it is. This
Really
card,
such
I
a-
saw this card and I was like, in the cube immediately.
This is such a great cube tool. First of all, water's the weakest color, and so like
Yes.
water getting any tools is just always pleasant. And this one it's first of all so in flavor for water. So I'll read it. It's blue for a 6/7 with quick cast and flying. So we're already a great body in cube, by the way. So even if I stopped reading there, that card is already borderline playable in cube. Just
I
so
would
we have a
agree. I would
baseline. Like
agree.
if in case anyone was confused about what the power level of this format was, that's already good. You may pay blue less to play this if you control a J ruler. It doesn't really matter. And enter rest target J resonator. It doesn't recover during its controller's next recovery phase. So it frost links if you're from Magic. Does that effect. And when this card is destroyed, it does that again. Rest of J resonator and it doesn't recover. So just an incredible tempo tool. It is so hard to not be ahead on board the turn that you play this. It enables attacks. It protects you. It has a great body itself. It's quick cast, which holds up a lot of Blue's combat trick stuff, combos well with wind and other things that wanted to hold up quick cast mana. Just a really great all-star player. Flash blockers. They go to combat. You can rest down the thing, and then you get to attack it on your next turn because that's how combat and Force of Will works. Really, just an all-star card. Great addition.
Yeah, and then sometimes you can only pay 1 for it.
Yeah, sometimes.
Sometimes, but still,
That'll come up occasionally, I'm sure.
just a great card.
Yes, thank you.
I do.
Absolutely.
I'm trying to look at one of the other cards in blue here. This would be another. I'd be curious to see your thoughts. Blue's identity in the cube is certainly really, I think, leaning on its card draw, like more so than anything else, because the best cards in blue have always been like the ones that draw you cards while also doing other things, so like constantly maintaining hand advantage. So I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. Oh, I guess it doesn't really necessarily matter because of the revolution, but even at the 3-cost level, because we talked about in terms of games going longer, Loki's Deception, the redirect or steal and enter. Specifically because of the steal and enter idea is just something that like we just haven't had. And in the cube environment, something like this to like turn your opponent's bomb against them, I think could be really good for blue in the cube.
Yeah. So you never get the alternate cast in cube, unfortunately. Right. So it's only the blue gain control of an enter or change the target. That being said, I think if you're deep blue, I think that can be very good. One of the cool elements of cube is that you get to play more expensive stuff, and as such, you get more impactful enter abilities that you don't normally see in constructed. Wherein, like in constructed, this is stealing the enters of 1 and 2 drops, and then I recognize that by Force of Will design, sometimes those are even better anyway. But like stealing a hook trigger with this would just be. I mean, could you even imagine how ridiculous that would be? It'd be incredible. But I think that. Actually, does that work? Gain control of target enter ability. So if it's targeted, it actually doesn't even. Yeah. I don't actually think that works.
Yeah,
all right,
it wouldn't take hook. It wouldn't take hook, unfortunately.
I'm trying to think of my brother standing right here. Are there any insane enters in the cube that would be just insane to steal? I was going to say Nyarlathotep Moons, but then you don't even have the thing to shoot them.
Yeah, this one was on my list.
Jupiter.
This one was on my list of like not necessarily obvious, but because of the way that cube plays versus New Frontiers, like the consideration of not having the cost modifications.
I would love for this card to be good because I think that playing a triple blue control hold up mana version of a cube deck sounds like a ton of fun.
Right.
I think that if you said I put Loki's Deception in this specific cube and it was insane, that would just like make my heart so happy. Like I would love that to be true. I don't know if it's that good right now in our cube, but it certainly could be, especially as water gets better. I think triple water holds it back a little bit, but it certainly could be good. I mean, it certainly has ways that it could be insane.
Mike, what's a card that you would put in a cube from this set?
Yeah, Mike, calling on you. We're in school again.
Oh my god, calling on me. Wow.
What's a card that you would put in a cube?
Let's see. That's a great question that I'll have the answer to very shortly.
Oh, can I tell you a card that we did not put in our cube?
Yeah,
and
go
then
for
have
it.
have a discussion about that.
Yeah.
So Underground Giant is a 4-mana 17/17 with Barrier, and he enters the field rested, and you can pay 2 less to play this card if a J rule you control was destroyed this turn, which doesn't text
And
that
you
matters.
didn't put this guy into the cube.
I did not put this card in our cube, and I kind of want to talk about why I didn't put this card
Yeah,
in our
go
cube.
for it.
It's annoying because it's the kind of card that enters as a tap 17/17. So if it can be dealt with, you have to throw your whole board into it to get 17 damage, essentially. But otherwise, it can't be dealt with, and then it's just too huge to ever deal with in combat. It probably isn't even like insane. Like it's probably just an upper medium card. I mean, it's a thick 4-drop. There's banish in this cube. Things can get around it. I mean, you'd have to waste your turn to play a tapped thing. That's just terrible against aggro. But if a card is aggressively high medium, you have to ask yourself, does this add to the experience? And I personally think that Barrier is just a terrible keyword for the cube. You should have it on as few things as you can get away with having it on.
I would agree with that.
So, even though this card looks like it would be a good addition to the cube, I'm just not interested in including it, and so that's why we don't have it in there.
It's a great point. Mike, back to you.
Back to you, Mike.
First things first, I'm looking in this chat. Did I miss something about people talking about Tails and Villains not being able to be played in the same deck? I'm pretty sure that it's on the fucking rulers.
No,
Well, so here's the thing. There was some so I have the story. The rulers
Okay.
the rulers say like
If
Loki
it's
and
Tails,
Loki
you
Loki, yeah, the rulers have that text, right?
Yes.
Then the CR came out, and the specificity in the CR regarding Tails and Villains specifically the concept of Tails and Villains did not create a deck building restriction. So the only restriction as of the CR's release was the restriction caused by the new rulers, meaning if you were outside of those rulers, you could play both. Then,
as I've read it,
the Q&A document clarified that it is actually like Will of Hope, Will of Despair, and you cannot play them both in the same deck regardless of the ruler.
Isn't that not how Will of Hope and Will of Despair works?
I'm fairly sure that's not how Will of Hope and Will of Despair
you could play Will of Hope and Will of Despair cards in the same deck. It was just the books that prevented you.
The books prevented it.
Well then, even more confusing, but at the end of the day, you cannot play them both in the same deck regardless of ruler.
Okay.
That's the thing.
That's not how it reads.
You can't play them both in the same deck regardless of ruler.
Even with that being right, I'm not sure whether or not we'll have a discussion in our household about changing it, but we actually haven't cared about that for Cube. I don't know if it has even come up
in the limited environment. So having done played, that's a bad sentence. Having played having played draft and sealed for the new set, both being allowed to play both in the same deck and being not allowed to play both in the same deck, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't you draw so few Tails or Villains because of just how many there are in the set, at least, that if you were to even to consider putting some of them in the cube, you could ignore that in terms of deck construction for limited. So good point, Mike, to bring up so we can talk about it. But that's the other nice thing about cube is you can kind of there's not official rules for it. So you could just kind of make a house call.
You want something really cool? I don't have to play a competitive Force Will tournament in the next year, so I can just choose to ignore that stupid fucking CR decision.
And, also, I have excellent news. We did not add any Tails to our cube.
Yeah, I haven't.
Only Villains.
Only Villains.
We're good.
Only villains.
Oops, only villains. So, that being said, Mike, what card would you add to the cube?
Okay. So,
pick a card, Mike. Any card.
It's gonna be a hot take, but Wind Knight of Ma'at.
Oh, love. Good choice. Great choice.
Yeah, absolutely. I play that card in my cube.
It's a huge power card by the standard of our cube too. I feel like our cube has less bombs than what you guys have, in my opinion, just from what I've been hearing so far.
Sure.
Which obviously it creates a very different play environment. I do recommend that if anybody in chat has played with a more curated cube towards what Jeremy and Brandon have, I would also recommend keeping a cube that's a little bit more just casual. We have like OG Valhalla cards in our cubes.
Oh yeah, ours is
like,
just New
bad
Frontiers to
ones.
now. Like ours
Like,
is just
ours are bad.
ours is the cheesy tagline for my cube is the best of Fow from Grim to now. So
That's pretty cheesy.
starts at Grim
Like,
Cluster.
We've got that thing that just like copies a spell, like you steal the spell for yourself. I've played it once. They put Circle of Nullify in there. It doesn't do anything, but you know it's great to have it because you just look at it and you go, yeah, that's a last pick, and you pass it off to someone else, and then it comes back to you anyway, and you're like,
There's some
I
fun in that.
deserve this. Yeah. You know that if you're ninth in rotation, you pass it around with 4 people, you're just like, this is coming back to me, isn't it? So you just kind of do whatever.
Sometimes you just know what
This
cards.
conversation, my brother has gone through the cards and given me ones that I missed. So I apologize if I have to go
good.
back to light again. Apparently, we added Keep the Faith to our cube.
Yeah, that was a card that I was going to talk about of Keep the Faith too.
Yeah, I forgot it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
It's 1 light for quick cast. Choose 1. Target J-Res gets +4/+4 flying and drain until end of turn. Put target non-metric stone, non-chant card with total cost 1 or less from your graveyard to the field, or basically do that with alternate cards. And yeah, there's not a whole lot to say about this card. It's a fun little combat trick. I think you're going to use the first mode 90+% of the time when you play this. It's just 1 light +4/+4 quick cast, flying and drain. And yeah, I mean for that mode, light has kind of always had an anti-aggro identity in our cube, and that it has like Naughty Child's Chastising and Miscalc. It's always a joke that you don't want them to
fucking
write.
name for a card, but anyway.
I love that name. I'll say it a million times. But
Miscalc.
yeah, and so
I
it's
did
just
not Child's Chastising.
another way to keep like deeply aggressive decks in check, and it's fine. I think it's medium, but it made the cut. And the other card that apparently I missed is Fenrir. In
blue,
dog.
Fenrir the good boy.
It is a very good dog. I think I skipped over it because I thought that all of its text was under Revolution, but that's not true. It is a blue 6/8 quick cast, which we kind of already talked about was like an okay body, and just quick cast in blue. So quick cast combos.
It's got villains, so now you can't play Tails for some stupid.
I already said there's no Tails in the cube anyway, so we're good. And when it enters, J-Res, your opponent's control get -10, -0 until end of turn, so it's like a little bit of a fog effect. And then when it dies, you draw a card. And yeah, that's a cool little card too. Nothing terribly impressive to say about it, except to say that I particularly emphasize quick cast on water cards. And yeah. Sorry, I missed those.
Keep the Faith, I think, is interesting because its implication in the cube is significantly different than its implication of why it's good in New Frontiers. The mode in the mode in New Frontiers that's insane on Keep the Faith is the ability to grab any 1-drop entity from your graveyard and cheat it into play at instant speed, regardless of color. That's the crazy part about it. But in Cube, the 1-drop part of it is going to be significantly less applicable. But the +4/+4 flying grain element of it is, which is a great, again goes to speak to how the Cube experience is so different. Is that like cards have different implications, cards have different weight to them.
Right. Well, your deck is going to be predominantly is going to be a lot more 1-drops in Constructed, and also you just don't really care about combat in Constructed basically ever. Where in combat matters a lot. So combat tricks in Cube get to do something. I mean, in Constructed, I imagine this is 90+% of the time reanimate a 1-drop, and in Cube, it's 90+% of the time the combat trick, which is really cool.
Yeah. We also, I mean, like you could say that it's like a power crept Magic Suites, but also at the same time, like that's okay.
Magic Suites is Barrier, which is probably the most relevant mode on that card. This is not the Barrier.
Right.
So Magic Suites is typically 1 light, cancel a kill spell. This is more win a combat or 1 light, gain a bunch of life.
Yep.
So real talk, guys. Boat.
Skidblinier? The unblockable?
Skidblinier?
Skidblinier.
How do you say that?
Boat.
So
sure.
1-drop, quick cast, unanswered, search your deck for a giant, and shuffle your deck.
I completely forgot this card to quick cast too. I was
when
just like
your J-Ruler dies, it goes back
else
into your hand, and you can tap to get something unblockable. In the blue,
unblockable is a keyword that we really don't get a lot of in Force.
Oh sure, and it certainly gives like because it's 1-drop. Like this is a card that I absolutely would consider for the cube because of the fact that we're playing Brandon, you guys use the Rhea cluster rulers, correct? For yours?
We use rulers that have no text except for a color. So you get to pick any of the 5 colors, and that only affects your energize, and then judges for 4 and is a 10/10 on the
So
backside.
you
That is
don't
all
have
it
any
means.
limited counters, right?
We do
So
not
like
have any limited
so like
counters.
that also is this is a great example of a card that would have drastic implication differences for my cube versus Brandon's cube, because my cube we use the Order of Will, which is the one that has the 3 filters. So then suddenly a card like this becomes significantly more playable regardless of what you've drafted, because it's only 1 blue. So like the idea of being able to splash an unblockable support card into your deck by burning a limit counter suddenly makes this card much more implicatable, as opposed to necessarily in Brandon's cube where he doesn't have that flexibility, and so maybe it doesn't have quite as much playability in that space.
I don't think
Or
there's any giants in our cube besides Alice.
I don't think so as well.
Think of one.
Yeah, I don't think we have any giants as well. We
Yeah,
just
no
have,
Trow.
just have we just have Alice, Zeus Alice.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, it's an aggressive blue card, which is a little bit outside of the identity. That's not a problem. Having cards that push the boundaries of the color in other directions is great. This card is interesting. I think it's a very cool addition. Yeah, I would certainly wouldn't mind having that at all.
Cool. I think in Wind, I'd be curious to see if you were playing any different Wind cards other than just Wind Mage of Ma'at, but I personally don't.
We didn't add Wind Mage of Ma'at to ours.
Right. Even regardless of if you did or not, I don't think there's anything in this cube in this set that I would consider adding to Wind, except maybe Wind Mage of Ma'at.
No, we actually didn't add any Wind cards at all.
Yeah, and in Darkness, I don't know if there's any cards.
We added
So
Darkness.
I have an interesting question for both of you.
Sure.
Are there any cards that, upon being released from this set and being added to your cube, you went back and found something from earlier and said, "Ooh, this would be cool to add into the cube," in relation to adding this new card?
It's a good idea. Yeah, I don't think we did that specifically, but we're kind of always wanting to expand on previous cards that have existed if like new specific archetypes for that set open up. I can't say that we did it this time, but we did do it with the last set that came out, where we retroactively added Tiny Violet and a bunch of random atoms that are like independently good.
Okay.
And I think that was really cool. That's added just a minor, because the cool thing about that set is that like those cards are just like okay anyway. Like the red black kill spell's good. The what other ones do we have? We have red blue, tap a thing, deal 4, and we have the red one that does 8 and strips abilities, and all those cards are just like playable on their own. But then if you have a Tiny Violet, it like increases their synergy in a really cool little way. And Tiny Violet by
herself, yeah,
is
just like a
just
discard engine.
Yeah. She's a red for a 3/4 flyer, which in cube is actually already just kind of an aggressively costed body.
Yeah, because immediately off the top of my head, when looking at, obviously I thought of Boat because the unblockable thing, combat tricks for blue is kind of cool. But then you think of blue's identity, and you think of going back to Vingolf 3 for Vafthrudnir.
What card? What are you?
Oh, the 4-drop cancel the Resonator spell on a body.
Yeah, green, blue, and 2 for a 6/8 giant that cancels a Resonator spell, which I think is adorable when you can search it off of this.
Yeah, I like that idea too. The idea of I think the thing about the cube that we try to stick to is it's not just about adding in new cards. Because I think that like if you do that, then like you're just gonna cycle everything out. It's all about like just creating. It's about the play space that you're creating and truly and getting the most out of every Force of Will card that we've had. So like I put in a bunch more like null stuff into our like the cards that were like
Voidosaurus,
like not necessarily those ones, but like when I took a look at some of the null stuff, then I started to say like, okay, well maybe we can try to give more discard elements into it to kind of have this draftable null experience.
Electo package stuff,
not
the dinosaurs.
Yeah, not the dinosaur stuff. Like I didn't put Electo in the cube. But like the idea of, okay, well, this is a cool null idea. What are some of old cards that I could use to feed in to kind of help fuel that as a potential idea and then make that playable? So yeah,
It's
that's
all
certainly
about
something you can do.
crafting the experience you enjoy. That's
Yeah.
really Cube is iterating on like, oh, I enjoyed this, I'm gonna put more of that in there. Oh, this was unfun, I'm gonna take this out, and then eventually sculpting this great play environment where you get to really enjoy the best of Forcible. And again,
Yeah.
I can't sing Cube's praises high
Yeah.
enough. It's just a great format.
Yeah, for an instant another good example is Asmodeus enchantment, the reanimate a thing, and if you awaken it, you can give it swiftness. When that card came in, I went back in time and I flushed out a little bit more of like a discard idea. Not that we weren't playing discard before, but like more stuff to kind of facilitate the discard idea of like, hey, this older card that let you, like, I mean, even like to just force an opponent to discard a card of their choice suddenly has potential a lot more implication when this Modius enchantment exists in the cube, and you're like, you discarded the wrong thing. Like, I'm gonna take that. And
when making the decision for whether or not to include a card, sometimes its synergy with pre-existing cards or its contribution to an archetype will be a reason to put it in there. Like we're playing Avatar of Woe, is that what the card? Baleful Avatar. It's black for a 3/4. When it enters, they discard a card.
Yep.
And it's
Avatar
not a
of
good
Woe.
card. I don't know. I don't know where I pulled that
It's a
from.
magic card, dude.
I'm sure it is. I was thinking it's probably a magic card, but when it's not a good card, but it's in the cube because we have a strong discard package in the cube, and it's nice that discard is one of those mechanics that also combos with itself, and so like you get to have all these.
Real question:
Mhm.
Do you have the World Tree Protector that, when it dies, searches an avatar from the deck to synergize with that black-green identity that goes into this discard package?
You don't have any rulers in the cube. You're talking about Yggdrasil?
No, there's a
World Tree Protector.
There's a 2-drop avatar. There's a 2-drop avatar that when it dies, you search for another avatar.
Yeah,
another avatar. It's kind of cool, but I don't think
you can also search King in Yellow, who can't search any more King in Yellows, considering it's a cube.
And it can't search itself, of course. You can find Alice though.
You can.
You can find Alice.
You can find Alice.
Did
you mention that you were putting Dark Sun in the cube? The 1-drop black.
I was about to say that I was putting Dark Mage of Ma'at.
Oh, Dark Mage of Ma'at. Okay.
Yeah, so it's only text that matters in the cube is black for a 4/4 Bane, and enter target Resonator gets -4/-4 until end of turn. Just a nice little piece filler. I'm not going to say this card's like insane, but
yeah, it does the job.
Bane is a very fun mechanic in my mind because it's combat centric. It puts problems out that have immediate answers. And this one it's nice. There's just a lot of like problematic, maybe that's a weird word for it, but like opponents like putting problematic 1-drops into play can sometimes be an issue. So like cards that punish low cost things tends to make the cube experience more fun because it pushes the game later and encourages higher cost things. And so this card pushes gameplay in a positive direction. So that's why it's going in there, even though it's not like the flashiest card.
To kind of end us here, do you have any multicolor cards from this set? I'm looking at them, and a lot of them rely on the force resonance mechanic. So like, I don't really think that any of them are particularly worth including.
I don't think we have any multicolor. Let me
just raw Dogamagra. It's fine.
Yeah, Calamity Shield. We considered going in there. We think it's a little bit obnoxious.
Yeah, I was of the same mind of like, it might not, for the experience wise, it might be a little bit too much.
Yeah, there's a certain, as we were kind of talking about, I think I've brought this up like many times, but like color balance is a bit of a concern. Red-white is a color combination that could use a little help, and so Calamity Shield, it is a little bit more in the conversation. The card is just so annoying that it's probably not gonna make it on the sort of the fun caveat. Sure. But yeah, no multicolor cards.
Cool.
If there was gonna be one, it'd be Calamity Shield.
Yeah, and that brings us to the end. Brings us to the end of what we. I mean, I think pretty much we would agree on every single card.
Would you say that this cube discussion has been fully squared away?
Okay.
Squared away. I don't even think I've ever heard that term before. You're just pulling that out, just running that.
He's going for it.
I mean,
he's committed.
To be fair, what is a cube if not just a lot of squares?
Yeah. Yeah, you're gonna have to square up if you don't start stopping that.
Well, enough about these square puns.
I feel like I got really just rectangled right there. They're getting worse.
They're getting way worse.
Okay, so I will say
I'll
this.
circle back to you. Don't worry.
Like I said, if this is something that you're interested in, I'll post it again here in the chat. And I'll probably, if you're watching this in the post, I'll probably pin it as a comment below. You're more than welcome to check out the spreadsheet that we have. It's community open source. You are absolutely allowed to peek at it and like suggest cards and things like that. We just ask that you don't touch the current actual cube list. But feel free to do that. And like I said, hopefully soon we'll be able to have an announcement of some kind of deal with ccgprime.com where you can just click buy the cube and you will be able to purchase the cube as it stands right now. Save you a lot of hassle and you'll get to enjoy it with your friends. That being said, if you want a chance to play the cube with us live, as soon as it gets announced, be sure to start coming to GPs because we typically bring the cube to GPs. And so we encourage all kinds of people to join us and hang out with us. And we try to offer it as a side event potential as well to run the cube at GP events. So if this is something you're interested in, it's a lot of fun. I don't think we've ever had anyone walk away from it not having a good time. Even those players who like left FOW and then came back. Like they've all had a good time playing this environment. So
yeah, there's a certain joy to just fun, fair Force of Will, just playing the game as it was meant to be played.
I fucking
Fair,
forgot what fun Fair Force of Will felt like,
on
man.
curve resonators, just play it, just get it into combat, having thick boards, having big hands.
I'm going to play a 3-drop now and not lose the game immediately.
Oh yeah,
Your
yeah.
move,
When was the
3D
last time
boy.
you got to just resolve a main phase 3-drop? I mean, there's a fun to that you just don't get.
yesterday. Anyway,
don't lie to us, Jeremy. It's fine.
Yesterday. I'm just saying. That being said, hopefully we will be able to have one of these podcasts shortly. With the GP schedule, we'll see. Hopefully we get some information on that soon. The big question I think that I have to kind of end us here tonight is whether or not the GP schedule is going to allow set 2 or like when it's going to come out, if set 2 of this cluster is going to be viable yet or not based on the release, because set 2 has been announced, Game of Gods Reloaded, and is not delayed. It's sticking to end of February. So like we just got the set and new set comes out in a month. It comes out in 2 months. Wow. Like there's no delay in set 2. The issues that were there for set 1 have been resolved in terms of printing. So we'll have to see. But we'll have a conversation about that as soon as we can, as well as hopefully spoilers-ish soon. But as we go into a year of 2022, I do want to just say thank you all so much for being here. It has been a wonderful 2021 to see the channel grow, to see these new projects grow, and have great conversations of me yelling at Mike and all kinds of guests like Brandon joining in and just having a chill time. This is our third like vodcast series that we did. It started way back with the Teachers Lounge and then all kinds of other stuff, and now we're here. And so it's just good to be able to chat with you all about Force of Will and enjoy it. And so here's to a wonderful 2022. Wishing you all a happy new year, and we'll see you next time. So until then, this has been DMO73. I've been joined, as always, by Mike Rants.
Hey guys, it's been me, JMO73, and I've been joined here by Brandan Bremont.
Yeah, just so you know, this the recording room in Discord that we use is still called Teachers Lounge.
It is still called Teachers Lounge.
There's remnants that will always be here.
Yeah, it's true. And in fact, my thing on my my thing on my Stream Deck is still called Teachers Lounge for doing this. So thank you all so much. Have a wonderful night, and until next time, class dismissed.